Cannae, 216 BCE, the day Rome discovered that confidence is not the same thing as a plan. By this point in the Second Punic War, Hannibal Barca had already marched out of legend and into Roman nightmares. He had crossed the Alps, mauled Roman armies at Trebia, then ambushed another at Lake Trasimene. Rome's response was very Roman. Raise an even bigger army, grit your teeth, and assume sheer mass would solve what subtlety had not. It's a strategy that has worked for many empires, right up until the exact day it doesn't. To be fair, Rome had briefly tried caution under Fabius Maximus, shadowing Hannibal, avoiding pitched battle, and slowly wearing him down. Sensible? Absolutely. Popular? Not remotely. Roman public mood wanted action, not patience. So in 216 BCE, Rome assembled one of the largest armies it had ever fielded and sent it south with two consuls, Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro, sharing command. In peacetime, that sounds like Republican balance. In crisis, it can feel like trying to steer a chariot with two reins attached to different drivers who dislike each other. The armies met near Cannae, close to the Aufidus River in Apulia, under summer heat and dust-choked wind. Ancient figures vary, but most accounts agree Rome heavily outnumbered Hannibal in infantry, while Hannibal held a major edge in cavalry quality and flexibility. Roman commanders aimed to crush his center with brute force. Hannibal aimed to let them try. He chose the ground carefully, arranged his troops with unnerving precision, and prepared a battle that would become the military equivalent of a geometry lesson taught with spears. This is the core irony of Cannae. Rome came looking for a decisive battle. Hannibal was happy to provide one, on his terms, with the kind of hospitality that starts with open arms and ends with the doors locked from the outside. Hannibal's deployment was audacious and deceptively simple. In the center, he placed Iberian and Gallic infantry in a forward curving line, like a shallow bow facing the Romans. On either side, slightly refused and set back, stood his best African infantry, disciplined and battle-tested. His cavalry anchored the wings, with heavy cavalry on one flank and nimble Numidians on the other. The whole formation looked vulnerable in the middle and strong at the edges, which was exactly the point. Rome saw that bulging center and did what Rome did best: push harder. The legions advanced in dense depth, trying to punch straight through. At first, it worked. Hannibal's center gave ground, falling back in controlled stages. To Roman soldiers, this felt like victory arriving on schedule. The enemy was retreating. Pressure was working. One more surge and it would all break. But this was not collapse. It was choreography. As the Carthaginian center bent inward, the Roman mass kept pressing into a narrowing space. The more they advanced, the tighter they packed themselves. Rear ranks shoved forward, front ranks lost room to maneuver, and command signals dissolved in heat, dust, noise, and panic. Then Hannibal sprung the trap. The African infantry on both flanks wheeled inward, striking the exposed Roman sides. At nearly the same time, Carthaginian cavalry won on the wings, swept behind the Roman formation, and slammed the rear shut. Now Rome was surrounded, front, flanks, and back. The army that had arrived as a battering ram became a trapped crowd. Discipline and courage still mattered, but physics mattered more. Men could barely lift their arms, much less fight effectively. Cannae became not a line battle, but an encirclement slaughter. Hannibal had turned Roman strength into Roman suffocation. It remains one of the clearest examples in military history of tactical double envelopment: brilliant, terrifying, and brutally efficient. The casualty numbers in ancient sources differ, as they often do, but the scale of disaster does not. Tens of thousands of Romans and allied troops were killed in a single day, possibly around 50,000 or more, with some ancient accounts going even higher. Carthaginian losses were far lower by comparison. Large portions of Rome's political and military elite died in the crush. Consul Paulus was killed. Varro escaped with a remnant. What happened at Cannae was not a routine defeat, it was a national trauma. And yet, this is where the story becomes even more interesting. Rome did not surrender. It did not sue for peace in panic. It did not disintegrate because one catastrophic battle said it should. Some allies defected, and cities like Capua shifted away from Rome, but the Republic itself absorbed the blow and kept moving. New armies were raised. Old boys became officers faster than anyone wanted. Teenage recruits found themselves in uniforms that had belonged to men who never came home. So why didn't Hannibal just march on Rome and finish the war? Because destroying a field army and taking a fortified capital are different jobs, requiring different tools. Hannibal had achieved tactical perfection, but siege warfare against Rome demanded manpower, equipment, secure supply, political defections on a wider scale, and time. Lots of time. Rome's institutions, manpower systems, and stubborn civic culture denied him the quick strategic collapse he needed. After Cannae, Rome leaned back to the kind of strategy it had previously mocked: avoid giving Hannibal another decisive battle, grind down his options, and stretch his campaign until brilliance could no longer compensate for logistics. If Cannae proved Hannibal was the finest battlefield tactician of his age, Rome's response proved something equally important. States are not only defeated by losses, they are defeated when they stop organizing after losses.
Cannae endures because it teaches two hard truths at once. First, genius can beat mass. Hannibal used timing, shape, and mobility to dismantle a larger force in open battle. He read Roman habits, invited those habits forward, then punished them with exquisite precision. Every modern war college studies this because the mechanics are timeless. Fix the enemy, deform his movement, collapse his options, then close the ring. Second, tactical brilliance does not guarantee strategic victory. Hannibal won the battle of a lifetime, but Rome survived the day, the year, and eventually the war. That survival came from institutions, manpower depth, allied networks, and grim political will. Rome learned to stop offering Hannibal the battlefield he wanted. It chose endurance over drama, attrition over pride, and method over revenge. Not glamorous, but devastatingly effective in the long run. There's also a useful modern lesson here for anyone in leadership, business, or politics. If your entire strategy is apply more force in the center, you might be seconds away from becoming someone else's case study. Cannae is what happens when confidence outruns adaptability. It is what happens when a system mistakes size for control. It is what happens when an opponent with fewer resources has a much clearer idea of how you think than you do. So Cannae was Rome's worst battlefield day and Hannibal's greatest masterpiece. It was a slaughter, a warning, and a paradox. Hannibal showed the world how to win brilliantly. Rome showed the world how to lose horribly and still refuse to disappear. That tension is why Cannae still matters more than 2,000 years later, because history is not only written by the winners of battles, it is also written by the survivors of them.